Ever feel like your brain is like just one stray thought away from totally crashing?
Oh, tell me about it.
Well, today we're diving into a guide that gets it. It really does. It's called Organizing Your Mind is Easy, actually. And it promises to make it, well, easy.
Yeah, I actually read that one. It's a fun read, and it's not like those other ones that are like, just try harder.
Right, like willpower is some magical cure-all.
Exactly. Like, no, sometimes you just need a better system.
100%. And this book, it kicks off with something I think everyone can get behind, the good old brain dump. You familiar with
Oh,
that?
yeah. It's basically acknowledging that our working memory, the space where we hold information while we're using it, it's super limited.
Oh, I can relate to that.
The author, they compare it to like having a ton of those little sticky notes.
Mental post-it notes everywhere.
Yes. Cluttering up your mental workspace.
Okay, so the brain dump, it's about getting all that out of your head.
Exactly. Onto paper, into a voice memo, whatever works, just get it out.
Ooh, I like that. So what kind of stuff are we talking about here? Like, what would you brain dump? Just to give people an idea.
Let us see. That to-do list that's been on your mind, write it down. That random idea you had in the shower, the one you're afraid you'll forget, jot it down.
It's like hitting Control-Alt-Delete, but for your brain.
Yes. You're freeing up mental RAM, basically.
I'm already feeling calmer just thinking about it.
Right. It's such a relief. And that's just step one. The book then goes into how to bring order to this chaos, right? We're talking about categorizing all that stuff we just dumped.
Okay, so from chaos to categories, I can work with that.
Yeah.
But how do we even begin to categorize our thoughts? It's like, I don't know, it's overwhelming.
The book actually uses a really good analogy. Think about doing laundry.
Laundry, okay, I'm intrigued.
You wouldn't just throw everything in together, right? Your delicates, your jeans, your whites, all mixed up. Chaos.
Definitely not. Separate loads all the way.
Exactly. Categorizing your thoughts, it's kind of similar. You're grouping similar items together so it's easier to manage.
Okay, that makes sense. Instead of piles of clothes, though, we're talking about like piles of thoughts. So what kind of thought categories does this book recommend?
It's pretty straightforward, actually. You've got your urgent tasks. Those are like the time-sensitive stuff. Got to deal with it now.
The things you're probably already stressing about a little.
Right. Then you've got your future tasks. Important, but they can wait a bit.
Okay, so urgent, future.
Yeah.
What's the last one?
And then the catch-all. Random thoughts, ideas, those maybe one-day things. We want to remember them, but they're not actionable right now.
So it's like a mental filing system. Urgent, future, someday.
That's a great way to put it.
I mean, that's way more manageable than this jumble I've got going on right now.
Right. And just like with a real filing system, when it's organized, you can find what you need way faster. Categorizing your thoughts, it does the same for your mental clarity.
It's like you're reducing the mental load.
Cognitive overload, that's the technical term.
Yeah, that. Because it's like our brains have limited bandwidth, you know. And when we exceed it, things start to
Crash and burn.
pretty much.
And that is why this next tip is so key. The book calls it Mental Inbox Zero, and it's all about making sure our thoughts don't pile up and overwhelm us.
Mental inbox zero. I love that.
Yeah.
Because honestly, if my actual inbox looked like my brain sometimes,
Disaster, right.
total disaster. So how do we do mental inbox zero?
It's actually simpler than you might think. Just like you, hopefully, check your email regularly.
Oh, I see where you're going with this.
The key is to schedule a specific time to check in with your mental inbox, too.
A designated meeting with my mind. Time. Tell me more.
Basically, you're reviewing that categorized brain dump we talked about, checking off any tasks you've done, adding new stuff, and prioritizing for the next day.
Active mental management, I'm into it. So we're not just letting those thoughts bounce around unchecked. We're taking control.
Huh.
Okay, so we've decluttered, we've categorized, we've got our mental inbox humming along. What's next in our quest for like peak mental organization? So we've got these systems in place, right? We're feeling good. But then there's that one thing. That thing we all do.
Oh, you mean procrastination?
You read my mind. And this book, it actually dives into that. And get this, it uses a phrase I never thought I'd hear in a productivity guide.
Let me guess. Eat the frog.
You've heard it. See? Told you I was kind of out there.
It's a classic, though. But it makes sense in context, I promise.
Okay, humor me. How does eating a metaphorical frog, I'm assuming, help us get organized?
So the frog, that's your biggest, most daunting task, the one you're most likely to put off.
Oh, I think we all have a frog lurking somewhere. That one task.
That makes you want to rearrange your sock drawer instead. Yeah.
Exactly. So what's the strategy here? Gulp it down in one go.
Pretty much. The idea is you tackle it first thing in the morning.
Before you even check email. Bold.
It's about getting it out of your mind. The book says that when we do that, we free up so much mental energy for the rest of the day.
Because even if we're not actively thinking about that big task, it's still kind of looming, taking up space.
Exactly. It reduces cognitive load, just like we were talking about before.
Okay, that makes sense. I could see how that would feel like a huge weight off your shoulders.
Right. It's a mental win to start your day. And speaking of mental load, the book makes an interesting point. It's not just about what's going on in our heads.
Oh, you mean like the outside world too?
Well, more specifically, our digital spaces. Think about it. When was the last time you felt overwhelmed by emails, notifications, all that?
Don't even get me started. It's like my phone is an extension of my brain and not in a good way.
And that's the thing. Our brains aren't meant to handle that constant onslaught of information. It's exhausting.
So what's the solution? Am I going off the grid?
No need to go full hermit mode. The book suggests starting small. Think of it like spring cleaning, but for your tech.
Digital decluttering, I like it. But what does that look like practically?
Could be as simple as turning off notifications for apps you don't need buzzing at you all day.
Oh yeah, those are the worst.
Right. Unsubscribe from email lists you never open anymore. Even just taking a few minutes to organize your computer desktop can make a difference.
It's about being more mindful of our digital spaces,
Yeah.
right? Instead of letting them run wild.
Exactly. And that actually ties into the next big topic, mindfulness.
Mindfulness. Okay, I'll admit, that word sometimes makes me feel like I need to be like sitting under a tree chanting.
I get it. It gets a bad rap sometimes. But this book, it breaks it down in a way that makes so much sense.
Okay, I'm listening.
It's not about emptying your mind. It's more about being present in the moment, intentionally.
Okay, so how do we actually do that? Especially when it feels like our minds are like 5 steps ahead all the time.
It starts with just noticing where your attention is going throughout the day. Like, are you really present in conversations, or are you half listening, half making mental to-do lists?
Oh, that's me all the time. Guilty.
It's more about noticing it and bringing yourself back to the present moment.
So it's a practice, not a like one-time thing.
Exactly. And the more you do it, the easier it gets. It's like building a mental muscle.
A mindfulness muscle. I like it. But how do we actually, practice this without it becoming just another thing on our to-do list?
The book has some really simple techniques. One of them is focusing on your breath, just noticing the sensation of each inhale and exhale.
That's it. Seems almost too easy.
Don't knock it till you try it. It's surprisingly grounding, especially when you're feeling stressed or overwhelmed.
So we're back. And we're tackling, well, maybe not tackling, but at least trying to wrangle our minds into some semblance of order. All thanks to this book. Organizing your mind is easy, actually.
It's a good one.
It is. And we've covered a lot already. Decluttering, categorizing, even making friends with our inboxes again, both mental and, the digital kind.
Right. It's a process.
It is.
Yeah.
But then this book throws us a bit of a curveball. A word I did not expect to see in a guide to mental organization.
Hit me with it. What's the word?
No.
The power of no. Classic.
But why is that so important? I mean, I get it. Saying yes to everything is a recipe for disaster.
But it's hard to actually do, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So how do we get better at saying no without feeling like, well, a terrible person?
Well, the book uses this analogy I really like. Imagine your mind is like a nightclub. Okay. And you're the bouncer.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
You get to decide who or what gets access to that VIP area, which is your mental energy.
So not every request, not every to-do gets to be on the list.
Exactly. You have limited space, right? So you got to be choosy. When you're faced with a new commitment, anything,
Yeah.
ask yourself, does this align with what I care about, with my goals?
So it's not just about saying no to be difficult. It's about protecting your time and energy for the things that actually matter.
Yes. It's self-care, basically. And
Cool.
when we're taking care of ourselves, we're able to show up better for everything else in our lives.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
It's like setting those boundaries actually gives us more freedom in the long run.
totally. And that ties into another big theme in the book, which is all about cultivating a more, how should I put it?
Positive outlook?
Yeah. But it's not about like forcing yourself to be happy all the time.
Okay, good, because that always felt a little inauthentic to me.
It's more about being aware of those negative thoughts we all have and challenging them.
Challenging them.
Yeah. Like when you catch yourself thinking, I can't do this, or this is going to be a disaster, don't just let it slide. Ask yourself, is it really true?
So it's like arguing back with your own inner critic.
Exactly. Put those negative thoughts on trial. Often, they can't stand up to a little scrutiny.
Okay, I like this. It's like Instead of letting those thoughts run the show, we can actually choose which ones we give our attention to.
And the more you practice this, the better you get at it. It's like building a mental muscle, just like with mindfulness.
It all comes back to mindfulness, doesn't it? It's like the foundation for all of this.
It really is. And that's what makes this book so powerful, I think. It gives you these practical tools that you can actually use in your everyday life. It's not just some vague self-help jargon.
It's actionable advice.
Yeah.
And on that note, I think we've reached the end of our deep dive into organizing your mind is easy, actually.
Yeah.
But like we were saying, this isn't the end, it's just the beginning.
Right. Take what you've learned here and, experiment with it. See what works for you. Maybe start with just one thing.
Exactly. Maybe you try the brain dump. Maybe you finally set some boundaries and say no to that thing you really don't want to do. Whatever it is, small changes can make a big difference.
And remember, there's no one right way to do this. It's all about finding what works for you and your unique, wonderful brain.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Oh,
So, to everyone listening, happy organizing, and we'll catch you on our next deep dive.